Everybody, and welcome to another of Bible Study with Transformation Sanctuary International. Had a wonderful day. I trust our day has been blessed so far. I trust God we are going to be blessed tonight, and God will speak to us, and our lives will not remain the same in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. It's always a pleasure to be here in God's presence, to learn at his feet and to be blessed again. And I'm sure that tonight we're going to be blessed in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. We'll start off with a word of prayer tonight. Let's pray. Father, we thank you tonight in the name of Jesus. We love you, Lord. We exalt your name. We give you glory. We give you praise. We thank you for your mercies and your goodness. We glorify your name in the name of Jesus. Lord, as we come into your presence tonight, we pray, Father, bless us. We pray, Father, speak to us. We pray, transform our lives again in the mighty name of Jesus. Do something new in our lives. Do something glorious. Do something wonderful. Do something mighty in the name of Jesus. As we have come to learn at your feet tonight, Father, speak to us, Lord. Bless us, Father, in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen. We love you, Lord. We exalt your name. We give you glory. We give you praise. For in Jesus' matchless name we have prayed. Amen. Amen. Hallelujah. Amen. Good to see us all tonight. I trust God, like I said, that we are all going to be blessed in the mighty name of Jesus Christ. Amen. All right. Tonight we have a very, very interesting character. We continue in our character studies of Bible great men of God in scriptures. And of course, we're still studying people in the Old Testament. And tonight, we're going to look at another wonderful character together tonight. I doubt if we will be able to finish off studying this great man of God tonight. And we'll just take it as it comes. We'll start off tonight. And if we don't finish tonight, continue next week, and then until we finish studying this great man of God. And if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please feel free to put it in the chat, raise your hand, ask your question. And if you're on Facebook, we'll try to pick it up. We'll try to pick it up from the chats on Facebook. So tonight we're studying a man named Abraham. Abraham is the man we are studying tonight, a man named Abraham. He is one of the most popular men in the Bible, not just in terms of the Old Testament. You know, a lot of times when we talk about the Old Testament and the New, we talk about two separate testaments. You have the Old and you have the New, and people say, oh, there is the Old, and the old is passed away, and now we have the new. But this man seems to transcend. It's almost like John the Baptist, another man who seems to transcend the two testaments, both the old and the new. Abraham, as we know him, is the father of faith. We know Abraham as the father of faith. It transcends both the Old Testament and the New Testament. And we're going to be studying his life tonight. And I just want to start off tonight by asking us a question around what we know of this man, this great man called Abraham. This great man called Abraham. What do we know of him? What are the general things we know about Abraham in no particular order? Anybody? What do you know about Abraham? What do you know? Can somebody please tell us one or two things they know about this man called Abraham?
Father of faith.
Abraham is the father of faith. He's called the father of faith. What do we mean by Abraham being the father of faith?
Yeah, he walked with God, and he believed God. So the Bible says Abraham believed God, even though he had not received the promise.
Abraham believed God, even though he had not received the promise. So Abraham set us an example of how we will live our lives and how we will walk with God. Before the law was given, before animal sacrifices were introduced, this man walked with God by faith. The Bible says Abraham believed God and it was accounted to him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of God. God showed us through Abraham, we saw a pattern of how future Christians, future believers will live their lives. Thank you for that. Abraham was the father of faith. Anything else about Abraham? Abraham did not have children for a very long time. For a very, very long time. We don't know when he and his wife got married. We don't know how long they've been looking for the fruit of the womb before God called Abraham. What we do know is that after God called Abraham, it took him another 25 years of walking with God before he eventually had Isaac. Of course, we know he had Ishmael along the way. Now, my question is, if you're waiting on God for something, can you wait 25 years before the promise is fulfilled? Think about it. Can you wait 20? Think about your age right now. I know you're smiling, Femi. Think about your age right now and add 25 years to your age before a promise God made is fulfilled. That was the reality for Abraham. At 75, God called him. He didn't have Isaac until he was 100. Yes. What's your contribution, Femi?
I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he was after Noah's time. So people were still trying to settle, and he was God's chosen, right? Out of everybody after Noah's time, with everything going on. And he willingly and did not for one second doubt the power of God. Because to wait 25 years for the child, to get the child, to then be asked to go sacrifice the child without asking questions. And it obviously has led to, in hindsight, we can look back and say, wow, what a great man he was. But at the time, I'm pretty sure he was questioning his own humanity as to why, after waiting this long, would I sacrifice the child that I love so much? But,
that's so true. That's so true. It's almost like you get to a point in your walk with God where you're almost like, what have I gotten myself into? Is it really worth all the sacrifice? Is it worth all this thing, what I'm about to lose? Is that really worth waiting on God for? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks, Femi. That's really insightful. Any other comments? Any other thoughts about Abraham? Abraham is called the father of nations. Again, showing the journey of faith from someone who had no child whatsoever, to eventually, by the time Abraham was dying, Abraham had given birth to children. Abraham gave birth to 8 children in total, eight biological children in total, and nearly each of those children went on to become a nation in their own right, fulfilling God's promise that he will be the father of nations. And that's reflected in his name, Abraham, father, and then Abraham, father of nations. Okay, thanks for that. Femi started off something. He mentioned something in there which I just want to highlight very quickly as we move on in the study of this guy. He said Abraham was after Noah. That is correct. What you will find from the beginning of time, up till now is that God is always looking for somebody to use on the earth. God is always looking for somebody to use in a special way. And guess what? It doesn't just have to be one person. God could be using 10 million people in 10 million special ways in their own ways. So when creation started, God started Adam, and Adam failed or fell. Then God moved over to Abel. Then Abel died. Then God moved over to Seth. And the Bible says in his days, men began to call on the name of the Lord. And then from Seth, he had a lineage, and Cain had another lineage, the good and the evil. And then on and on, there was Enoch in the middle. From the lineage of Seth, there was no good person in the lineage of Cain. But the lineage of Seth had very, very good people, or some good people, Enoch being one of them. And Noah, from the lineage of Seth, Noah was the 10th generation from Adam. Noah was the 10th generation from Adam, and God wiped off everybody and continued to use Noah. Now, from Noah came 3 children. Do we know the name of Noah's 3 children? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, when we talk about Ham, we're not talking about ham for sandwich. Let's just be clear. You know, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. You know, and Shem became the father of the Semitic people who evolved into the Israelites of today. And that's why Abraham came from that. So from Shem to Eber. Eber was the father, was the great-great-great-great-grandfather of Abraham. From Eber, you get Hebrews. And from there, you got, of course, you got Abraham. And it was called Abraham the Hebrew because his great-great-grandfather was Eber. You know, from Ham came Egypt and Africa, Lud, Lydia, Sudan, Ethiopia, Somalia, and all of those nations. You know, I always say it's amazing that there was once upon a time in the history of the world when the likes of Egypt and Ethiopia were these world superpowers, were the superpowers of the world. They were the current, you know, what you see in America and China today and UK and Russia, that was Egypt and Libya and Ethiopia at the time. Anyways, going on, Abraham was then the 10th generation from Noah. So Noah was the 10th generation from Adam. Abraham was the 10th generation from Noah. So I'm going to ask a tricky question there. How many generations were there between Adam and Abraham? How many? 19. There were 19 generations between Adam and Abraham. 19 generations, because Abraham was 20th from Adam. Now, let's see, what other things do we need to learn as part of the introduction? Who was Abraham's wife? Sarah. Sarah was Abraham's wife. Who was Sarah's dad? Anybody? Very, very evident. The answer is in the question. Okay, let me start again. Who was Abraham's wife? Sarah. Who was Abraham's dad?
Sarah.
Terah. And you see the similarity in names. Sarah, Terah. Who was Sarah's dad? No. Oh, come on, people. I told you the answer already.
Terah.
Terah. Terah was Abraham's dad. The Abraham and Sarah were from the same father, but not the same mother. They're from the same father, but not the same mother. And that was why Abraham always tried to get away with "she's my sister" when it's very convenient for him. Okay, a few things you need to know about Abraham's background. So Terah was Abraham's dad, yeah? Now, let's go to, I want us to read a passage of scripture which will just start us off tonight. Go turn with me your Bibles to Genesis chapter 11. Genesis chapter 11. Let's start with the story of Abraham's dad and see how that leads into Abraham's story. So we'll read Genesis 11, 27 to 32, and then we'll read Genesis 12 from verse 1 to verse 9. From verse 1 to verse 9. Let's start off with that. Genesis 11 from verse 27. Does somebody want to read for us? Somebody who can read very, very loudly so we can all hear. Genesis 11.
This is the account of Terah's family.
Okay.
Terah was the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran.
Okay.
And Haran was the father of Lot, for Haran died in Ur of the Chaldeans, the land of his birth, while his father Terah was still living. Meanwhile, Abram and Nahor both married. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. Milcah and sister Iscah were daughters of Nahor's brother Haran. But Sarai was unable to become pregnant and had no children. One day, Terah took his son Abraham, his daughter-in-law Sarai, and his grandson Lot, and moved away from Ur of the Chaldeans. He was headed for the land of Canaan, but they stopped at Haran and settled there. Terah lived for 205 years and died while he was still in Haran.
Okay. Now, this is Bible study, so we have an opportunity to dig deep and just for our own knowledge, pick out some of the things we probably haven't paid attention to before. And I like the fact that Femi read the New Living Translation of the Bible, which actually breaks it down more. Yes, question?
Where does it say that Sarah is
Where does he say, very good question, where does he say that Sarah is Terah's daughter? So Genesis 11, we'll read two scriptures just on that. So, as we always say, we love questions on this platform. It's Bible study. Let's ask questions. Let's contribute. Two scriptures we're going to read, Genesis 11:29 and Genesis 20:12. 20:12. Yeah, let's start with Genesis 11:29, which Femi read already. It says, meanwhile, Abraham and Nahor both married. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah. Milcah and her sister Iscah were daughters of Nahor's brother Haran. We're going to come back to that. Let's go to Genesis chapter 20 and verse 12. Genesis 20 verse 12. What does he say? Genesis 20:12. Oh. Yeah. Yes.
But indeed, she's truly my sister. She's the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother.
Okay.
And she became my wife.
And she became my wife. So does that make it clear there? Yeah. So in Genesis 20:12, Abraham said, Sarah is indeed his sister, the daughter of her father, but they are of, are they half, was he half his half sister or his stepsister actually?
So they're half.
Are you sure? I thought step was when you're same father, but not same mother, and half is when you're same mother, but not same father. Step is when your parents get married. We learn every time. But anyways, we've established that Abraham and Sarai had the same father, Terah, but different mothers, and they married. Now, it actually gets even more interesting. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 11. Let me show you something you probably haven't paid attention to before. And even though we're not talking about this guy tonight, we're going to learn about him and we'll talk about him in future. Now, let's look at Abraham's family tree. Terah had how many children? 3 children. What was the name of Terah's 3 sons? Abraham, that's verse 27. Nahor and Haran. 3 children Terah had. Now, Nahor married Milcah. Yeah. But before we get to who Milcah was, we know also that Haran, Abraham married Sarah. Nahor married Milcah. We don't know who Haran married. However, we know Haran was the father of who?
Lot.
Lot. Remember Lot? So we're going to talk about Lot later. There will be a special Bible study on Lot because there's so much to learn from the life of the great man of God. So, but Lot had two sisters. And in fact, it wasn't until this Bible study where I actually picked up that actually Lot also had two sisters. What were the names of Lot's two sisters? Milcah and Iscah. Now, if you're not reading the NLT translation, if you're reading the NKJV, you might be lost in translation at this point. Yeah. Let's read it in NKJV, verse 29. Then Abraham and Nahor took wives. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai. The name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. So it's actually clear too. So Haran had 3 children before he died. Now, Haran died whilst they were seeing all the Chaldees. And he had 3 children. What was the name of 3 children? Lot, Milcah, and Iscah. And we know that Nahor married his brother's daughter. What was that? Is that like a nephew? The uncle married the niece? Yeah. So Uncle Nahor married niece Milcah. But nephew Lot was not married at the time. And niece Iscah also wasn't married at the time. How many of us knew that Lot had 2 sisters? How many of us? I never knew that. Never knew Lot had 2 sisters, Milcah and Iscah. Amazing, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, okay. So he had 2 sisters, and whilst Haran was giving birth to children, and Nahor will marry one of his nieces, Abraham and Sarah couldn't give birth to any children. That makes it clear in that passage. We're going somewhere with this, yeah? They couldn't give birth to any children. You know, it's always a challenge sometimes, isn't it? When you see your brothers and your sisters around you doing things and you're unable to do it, especially when it comes to childbirth. Everybody's giving birth to children, and the children are growing, and they're now in primary school, now in secondary school, and yet you're still waiting. In fact, the children do so much that your brother married his niece, and you are yet to have any children. That was the story of Abraham. So there had been pressure in Abraham's life even before he met God at all. Half sister. That was what I thought. But, you know, children of nowadays, they said only if you are married, that's when you are step. I'd have to research that myself afterwards. I think they were half. I thought Abraham and Sarah were half brother and half sister. But that's my thinking. But I'm not an authority in English language, so I'd have to check. I'd have to check later. But it gets more interesting. Let's go to verse 31. Genesis chapter 11, verse 31. We're just still building the background into Abraham's life and the impact he had on his walk with God. What we established so far, he and his wife had the same dad. She was barren. Others around were giving birth. One of Abraham's brothers died. You know, that would have had an impact on him too. For somebody who has lost brothers, I know the impact the death of a sibling has. I know it. And that's exactly the position Abraham was in. He had lost a brother, and now he felt he saw himself as a father unto Lot, the male child. I don't think he had the same feelings for Milcah and Iscah. Well, Milcah was married. We don't know what happened to Iscah, but Abraham had a sense of responsibility towards Lot, as we will see later. Let's go to verse 31 as we continue. Genesis 11, 31. And Terah took his son Abram. Now, at this stage, his name was just Abram, father. Yeah. And Terah took Abraham, his son, and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abraham's wife, and they went out with them from all of the Chaldeans to go to the land of Canaan, and they came to Haran and dwelt there. So the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Now, this is where the tire hits the road. First question from me. Can anybody tell me why they think Terah left all of the Chaldees with his family? We're going to qualify that in a minute, to go to the land of Canaan. Why? Any thoughts? Why did Terah leave all of the Chaldees to go to, he was headed to Canaan, but he stopped in Haran? Why? Anybody?
Death of a child?
Sorry?
Was it the death of his the child Haran?
Is it the death of his child? Isn't it interesting there? Did you see that his son who died was named what? Haran. Where did he stop? On his way, Haran. You know, just again, just something to note. Maybe nothing of spiritual significance there, but his son who died was named Haran, and he settled in Haran. I guess he just got to Haran and he was just maybe overwhelmed, like, oh, you know what? This resonates with me. It's the name of my son, whose name was Haran, and he just settled there. Any reason, people? Why? Why do we think Terah left? Why do we think? Don't worry, it doesn't have to be a right or wrong answer. That God called him and told him to go to Canaan. That's a very, very good answer. Yeah, that's a very, very good answer. Any more before we dwell on that for a minute? Yeah.
Maybe Abraham told Terah that God.
Maybe Abraham told Terah that God called him. Maybe Abraham told Terah that God had called him. Thanks for that. And I think, in my opinion, that was most likely what happened. God called Abraham. Abraham told his dad. Now remember, they were idol. Oh, did we prove that they were idol worshippers? You know, they were idol worshippers. Yeah. Can somebody please read Joshua 24 verse 2 for us? Joshua 24 verse 2, just to see the lineage of Abraham, where he came from, his roots. Joshua 24 verse 2. Somebody please read for us.
And Joshua said to all the people.
And Joshua said to all the people. Thus says the Lord God of Israel.
Your fathers, including Terah.
Your fathers, including Terah. The father of Abraham.
And the father of Nahor.
And the father of Nahor.
Dwelt on the other side of the river.
Dwelt on the other side. Yeah.
And they served other gods.
And they served other gods. So here was Terah, an idol worshiper. Abraham and Nahor, idol worshippers. Then God will call Abraham. Abraham will tell his dad. And the dad said, if something has appeared to you and has called you to serve him, to go somewhere, guess what, son? I'm going to help you fulfill that vision. Let us go. And they packed everything and they left. When they left, where were they heading to? Canaan. So it couldn't have been a coincidence that they headed off to Canaan, which was where Abraham was headed to. Although that we probably have to caveat. We have to caveat in a minute. But Terah walked with Abraham, knowing God that called Abraham. Terah walked with Abraham to help him fulfill his vision. Now, I've got a question tonight. So, what lesson can we learn from the action Terah took to help Abraham fulfill his calling? Anybody? What lesson can we learn from that?
Trust, faith, and commitment.
Trust, faith, and commitment to the people around us. So when you say trust, that is, we must trust that God is saying what he has said to them. Yeah. So if God has called them, we must trust enough that yes, God has spoken. And so trust, what was the other one? Faith. Well, trust and faith are not too far from each other, are they? So we must have faith also in what they're planning to do, and commitment. We must go with them all the way. And that was exactly what Terah did for Abraham. If God has called you and he has asked you to go, guess what? We are all going with you. I think a lesson from me, any other lesson before I share my own lesson, what other lesson can we learn from the fact that Terah, Abraham's dad, supported what he wanted to do? Question.
I think once we, like Damso said, once we are able to establish that God is speaking to our children.
Yeah.
For example, I think it was Eli, when Samuel was called, and he couldn't decipher God's voice. And Eli now said to him, go lie down again. If you hear the voice again, say, Lord, I am here, I am, send me. And sometimes it's just from when our children or people we have influence over, people we are mentoring, when God is calling them to do something, I think is our responsibility to help them find it happening and to lead and to guide them through our experiences and through what God is saying.
Through what God is saying. Thank you for that. I think that raises a very, very pertinent point. And that's the fact that part of our, we don't know how Abraham confirmed that it was God who was calling him. Now we had the example of Samuel, and Eli had to step in. And like, when you hear this voice, this is what you say, you know. And Eli said to Samuel, say, speak, for your servant here. And Samuel must have been like, well, I'm not a servant to nobody. Why should I say your servant here? So you can also see trust on the part of the child to the parent. You know, like, okay, whatever you have to ask me to say, I am going to say, you know. And Terah just had to help Abraham get to that point where they were sure it was God, and he moved with him to go to the land of Canaan, Now, of course, they settled along the way in Haran. But before we talk about that, who was missing in the group which left all of the Chaldeans to go to Canaan? Who was missing from the pack? Nahor, the second born. Abraham being the first, Nahor being the second, and Haran being the third. Haran died. There were only two of them. Abraham said he had a call. Abraham moved off. Abraham said he was going to leave. Terah decided to go with him, or as the Bible says, Terah took Abraham actually, and they left Nahor behind. Let's explore that a bit. Today, probably the best we'll be able to do is lay a foundation about Abraham's history before we now go into the nitty-gritty, the practicalities. Maybe we'll do that next week. But let's think about this for a moment. Was there any chance of there being division in the family, or before we go into division? If you were Nahor, no, not you. How would he have reacted to the fact that his dad and his brother were leaving to go somewhere and he wasn't going with them? Anybody? Thoughts, just thoughts tonight. How would he have taken that? How would he have reacted?
Because first of all, Abraham is coming to the father and saying that he's getting this call from this spiritual being, while all three of them are being idol worshippers.
Yeah.
And it's most likely Nahor feels like he worships the idols more than Abraham does. So why would they want to talk to Abraham first? And then Terah reacting in the way of like understanding where Abraham is coming from and just leaping with faith, probably pushed Nahor to this, looked like Terah was pushing Nahor to the side and made Abraham look more like the spiritual one in the family than Nahor did. Nahor was. So probably Nahor was like, I'm going to stay here to prove to my father that I can be like Abraham, if not better. It could be one of those things.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So probably it was a decision. Maybe Nahor was actually offered the opportunity to go with them and was like, no, 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 no. I like what I'm doing. Abraham has seen what he has seen. I've not seen it. Abraham can go. I will continue with what I'm doing. And if that decides to go with Abraham, tough. That's fine. Okay, yeah. Any other thoughts on that? Any other thoughts on that? Could there have been division? Could there have been anger? Oh, daddy chose a favorite. Daddy decided to go with Abraham and not me. And oh, it's because Abraham was the first child. Any thoughts on that? Anyone? Terah going with Abraham and not taking Nahor along.
I think also it's they were still idol worshippers.
Okay.
So probably when Abraham and God told him to go, Nahor would have probably not thought about going with them. Why would we shift all our family because somebody has seen a vision or somebody has heard something? And I think the responsibility was on Terah to have convinced Nahor to go with them. But
right.
Why he did that or not, it's yeah.
Right. Okay. I guess something which we need to bear in mind also is the fact that at this stage they were all adults. Yeah. Milcah was married. Nahor was married to Milcah. We know that already, don't we? So Abraham was married to Sarah. Haran had children. So they weren't school-age children who would have had to like, okay, you need to follow me and all that. They had to make their own decisions as adults. But isn't it interesting then that when Isaac was going to get married, Abraham insisted that his servant must go back and get a wife for his son from Nahor's family. Isn't that amazing? He said, don't get a wife for my son in the land of Canaan. Go back to my father's house and get a wife for my son from there. You know what that says to me? Nahor actually may have, I think it actually happened, but I use the word may. I'll give you a scripture right now.
She comes late. But the lady says
Nahor may have embraced, I think Nahor embraced the faith of Abraham even before they left home. But it was just that he didn't go with them. Embraced the same faith as Abraham. Abraham introduced him to the God he served. And because remember Rebekah, Isaac married Rebekah, and we didn't learn that Rebekah was an idol worshiper. You know, when she was presented to Isaac, we're told that she was an idol worshiper. Indeed, when the servant prayed, God led the servant to Nahor's house. So Nahor probably most likely embraced the faith of Abraham, but decided not to go. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on from there. So Sarah takes Abraham. Let's go to the land of Canaan. But guess what? They got to Haran and they stopped. And they dwelt in Haran. So they lived in Haran for a while. And then what happened to Sarah in Haran? What happened to Sarah in Haran? Sarah died. Sarah passed on, but Sarah died whilst they were in Haran. Sarah died and all that. Now, again, another question. When they left home, where were they heading to?
Canaan.
Canaan. But along the way, they settled in where? Haran. And Sarah died there. Is there any lesson we can learn from that in terms of vision, in terms of the journey of life, in terms of where we are going? Any lesson? I made it open-ended so I don't lead you in any particular direction. Any lesson we can learn from that? Left all to go to Canaan, go to Haran, they stayed there, lived there a while, and then Sarah then died. Any lesson, people? Anybody? Leave home, get somewhere, stay, but not at your destination, but you've left home.
So it was more like Sarah settled for less. So I was speaking to a young girl a few days, it was 2 days ago, saying what you're doing now brings you money, but that's not the destination. That's not what God desires you to do. You still need to press on to achieve your aim or to get to that goal or that destination. So sometimes when we on our journey to destiny, sometimes we see things that makes us comfortable, and we tend to settle there instead of moving ahead into God's promise with our lives.
Thank you. You know, somebody said good is the enemy of better, and better is the enemy of best. Yeah? So, and that's one way of looking at this, and that's one lesson we can pick out of that. Sarah settled before they got to where they were going, before they got to Canaan. He told people at home, oh, we're off to Canaan and all that. Oh, well, you know, a proverb, an African proverb came to mind, and it's just difficult for me to translate it into English, but it was like the story of a man who needed to do a work on the farm. He needed a hoe, he needed the farming implements to work on his farm, and he didn't have. So he decided to go borrow from somebody who had. When he got there, he found them eating. And the man, being generous, said, oh, join us, come, join us. I said, okay, fine, oh, splendid. And he sat down and he started eating with them. Now, remember, he came in an emergency because he needed the implements. Whilst he was eating, somebody else arrived and asked for the same implement he had come for. And it was given to that person, and that person left. So when this guy finished eating, he was now like, oh, thank you. Ah, very nice. Okay, now for the real reason why I'm here. I need this particular tool. And the guy said, oh, somebody else came and took it away while you were eating. He said, but that was what I came for. I said, well, sorry, you can't have two. That's the bit that is difficult for me to translate into English. You can't win both ways and all that. Whatever your focus is, keep it if you're going to make a headway in life. Keep your focus and all that. Interestingly, I was speaking to a young lady myself this week, and I was saying to her that your dad is focused and all that. Now look at the trajectory of his life. He sets a focus, he knows where he's going, and he does everything to go to get to where he's going, irrespective of all the challenges which may come along his path. He dares the challenge, he goes for it, and he always achieves his aim at the end. Terah left home, got to Haran, and did what? Settle. Was Haran where God has called Abraham to? No. Yet they had left home and left a son at home. And there was no WhatsApp at the time, no Instagram, no tracking device to know where they got to. But that was what happened to Abraham. And that nearly derailed Abraham's calling. So even though his dad had helped him, his dad had set him up, it was still, I guess where I'm going with this was that it was still Abraham's responsibility to make sure that he gets to the promised land. Sometimes our parents may support us. Sometimes it may look like we're doing it on our own and we don't have all the support and all of that. We must not allow excuses stop us from getting to where God has called us to get to.
So I have a
Come on, go for it.
I think it was Terah's destiny to just lead Abraham to Canaan, right? So by settling in Haran, I think it was just a head start for Abraham at the end of the day, in my opinion. So that it was from then forward, it was Abraham's turn to then take the baton and then move forward to Canaan. I think it was in my opinion. So it was, I didn't like you said, it still was his responsibility to still get his things together and move away from his family. But his father was supposed to just lead him there, and he was supposed to still make the decision to go.
And that's a valid way. That's a valid way of looking at it. That okay, yeah, Terah, and sometimes that's what our parents are there for. Kickstart the journey, not do all the work for us from beginning right through to the end. At some point, we take responsibility. So once they've paved the way, once they've opened the door, it's for us to go through the door and fulfill our destiny. So I totally agree with you. I guess why I slightly disagree is because as long as Terah, if they got to Haran and Abraham left Terah in Haran and continued to Canaan, then I would have said, yes, Abraham saw it as, oh, that was just to kickstart my destiny. You know, it was like the story of Samson. Samson was called to begin, to launch the deliverance from the Philistines. That was his destiny. He wasn't going to destroy them all. He was to start it off, but he messed it up. He messed it up because of his love for women and wine. So the 3 W's a man must avoid: weed, wine, avoid them. And I'm not talking about getting married, because get married, or sure, get it. One of the ways of avoiding women is by getting married. But weed, wine, women, 3 things a man must be really, really careful about. And then when you become a believer, then God's girls, God's gold, God's glory, 3 things a man must stay away from and all that. But anyways, so we know that Terah died in Haran, and
Pastor, can I ask a question?
okay, yes, sir.
And Terah has a son.
2 sons.
That bears the name of the destiny of the
Yes.
Won't it be that Terah is contented and staying and dying in that place to fulfill his son's ceremony?
Yeah, exactly. You know, so Terah had a son called Haran who died. And of course, that must have been any parent who loses a son or a child. It's one which we must always pray will never happen, because it's a really, really sad occurrence for any parent. And then they got to Haran, and I'm sure just that name, Haran, just like I said, Terah probably became overwhelmed, or there was so much connection there. It was just like, you know what, this is it for me. And it's possible he might have said to Abraham, continue the journey. For me, this is where I stop. This is it. This is my last stop. I want to move on from here. All of that is very, very much possible. But I guess all of us agree that Terah played his role in facilitating maybe Abraham was so afraid, Abraham didn't know what to do, and Terah just facilitated that start. And then Terah got to a point where he felt, I'm done. This is where I stop. But it was now Abraham's responsibility to move ahead. We can't forever depend on support around us, including from our parents. We can't forever depend on them. We must at some point stand on our own 2 feet. And I say that either spiritually or physically or in any way, we must at some point stand on our own 2 feet. That my parents have helped me. The support I've received in life have helped me up till this point. The education I've received have helped me up to this point. My bosses at work have helped me up to this point. It is time I make my own decision. You know, people, I know some of us here, we're at work and we're always complaining. Oh, my boss this, my boss that, they did this, they did that. And one thing I keep saying to people is, your career journey is whose responsibility? Yours. Yours. At the moment in the UK, there are 1 million job vacancies. 1 million, over 1 million job vacancies. They're looking for people. And yet we still complain that, oh, my boss is not treating me right. Surely we will qualify for one out of that over 1 million. And some of us, we allow people talk to us anyhow, look down on us, make us feel like they are gods and all of that, when we can just prepare and go for something better. Promote ourselves if they're not going to promote us where we are. That is what Abraham should have done for himself. And maybe he actually did that. Let's go to Genesis chapter 12 and see. Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12, we need to read from verse 1 to verse 9. Up until this time, Abraham relied on his father for his journey. But let's look at what Abraham now did for himself. Can somebody please read Genesis chapter 12 from verse 1 to 9?
Now the Lord has said to Abraham, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land I will show you, and I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Verse 4. So Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. And Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Then Abraham took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the people whom they had acquired in Haran. They departed to go to the land of Canaan. So they came to the land of Canaan. Abraham passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as Terebinth's tree of Moreh, and the Canaanites were there in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, to your descendants I will give this land. And there he built an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him, and he moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Hai on the east. There he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. So Abraham journeyed, going on still towards the south.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you. Now, let's go back to verse 1. Can somebody please explain what that first phrase means? Now the Lord had said to Abraham. What does that mean? What does that mean to you? Now the Lord had said to Abraham.
It means that God is going to speak to Abraham.
It means God had already spoken to Abraham in the past. This wasn't new. Femi?
I was going to say it's the past participle. So
it was past participle.
Yeah. So It had been told in the past, but we're reading it now. So like it's, you know.
It had been told in the past, but we are reading it now. Now the Lord had said. God, I was going to ask what lesson that teaches us, but I guess the key lesson is God does not change his mind. If he promises you, either because he's asked you to carry out an action or because he's made you a promise that something good will happen to you, or he said if you sin, he's going to punish you, God, in those three categories, are many categories. So number one, he has given you a vision. He has said, this is what you're going to do for me, or this is the plan for your life. This is the journey for your life. He doesn't change his mind. Or secondly, he has said, I will bless you. I'm going to do something great in your life. You're going to be blessed. And you're going through a rough patch right now. He hasn't changed his mind. The devil will come and tell you, God has changed his mind. He never changes his mind. Or thirdly, he said, if you commit that sin, I'm going to punish you. And now because we're so drawn into the temptation and the desire, we feel, oh, you know what? When I sin, I'll ask God for forgiveness and that will be it. If he has told you that he will punish you, he will not change his mind. So God had said to Abraham, right from when he was in awe of the Chaldees, and maybe again when he was Haran, what did he say? Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land I will show you. Okay, Bible study students, tighten your seatbelt. It's going to get a bit difficult now, more complex, more complicated. Look at this. Who did God ask to leave? Abraham. Where was he asked to leave from? Let's break it down. Number one, from where? From his country. Leave the UK. No, God has not said that to me.
He said leave Nigeria.
Leave Nigeria, leave Ghana, leave wherever, Sudan, and go to the UK, to the land that I will show you in the UK. Go to America, not go to Afghanistan, not go to, before people used to go to Ukraine. And right now, not go to Ukraine, and all that. So he was asked to leave his country. One. Secondly, where was he asked to leave? His family. It's coming together now, isn't it? Leave your country. Leave your family. What was the third place he was asked to leave? His father's house. Leave your country. Leave your family. Leave your father's house to a land I will show you. Somebody knows where I'm going with this, don't you? Who did Abraham take with him on the journey? Did God make a mistake when he said, leave your country, leave your father's house, leave your family? Did God make a mistake? Think about it. Sometimes what we call support is not actually God's plan. And as you see Abraham's journey, do you now understand why his father died in where? Haran. Because his father was never meant to get to Canaan. Never. Wasn't part of the plan. It might have been part of the plan to set up Abraham, but it wasn't part of the plan for his father to go with him to Canaan, because he said, leave your father's house, your country, your father's house, and your family. So father's house, Terah died in Haran. Who continued to follow Abraham? Lot. And as you will see in the next chapter, chapter 13, if we get there tonight, even Lot at some point had to do what? Had to leave. Why? God does not make mistakes. God is not flippant. if you are trying to listen to what God is saying to you and you hear something like, I am not sure whether I should go right or go left, it is not God. That is still your own mind. Because God is not flippant. God will show you the path you should take. He says, leave your family, get out of your country, from your family, from your father's house, to a land I will show you. Now, what was the blessing? For a man who had no child at this stage, no child. You know, God must have spoken this to Abraham whilst at all of the child is, as we saw, who had no child. What was the promise? I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, the sevenfold blessing. You shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. The sevenfold blessings of Abraham. And that blessing is still sure for all of his descendants up till tomorrow. His descendants according to the covenant, because we need to caveat that. So let's think. Let's do a bit of geography now. Currently, who are the descendants of Abraham? Physically. Who are the descendants of Abraham? The Israelites, yes. One.
Hebrews.
Who, Femi?
Ishmaelites.
Ishmaelites or the Arabs. They can trace their own genealogy also to who? To Abraham. They are also descendants of Abraham. Now, when you now look at the children of Keturah, you find that the Midianites can trace their lineage also to who? To Abraham and a few other nations there. So physically, most of the people in the Asian world can trace.
Can I say the Palestinians too?
The Palestinians.
Because they are like Edomites, you know, Edomites from Esau. Esau is Jacob's son, right?
Yeah. So remember, the Edomites were subsumed, were swallowed up by Israel. Edom does not exist anywhere on the planet anymore. Yeah. During the 400 years of spiritual silence between Malachi and Matthew, Edom became Idumea, which was a tribe which fought against Israel. And the Maccabees, who were physical warriors at the time, conquered them, took all of them, brought them into Israel, destroyed all their land, married them to people and all that, until there was such a mixture that Edom became part of Israel. That's why Herod was called an Idumean, meaning he was from the tribe of Edom, even though he saw himself as an Israelite. Edom was swallowed up totally in Israel. But I get where you're coming from, that the Philistines, now the Philistines are different from the Edomites. The Philistines came from Caphtorim, yeah, and they are, if I get my geography right, although they were also part of the genealogy of Seth, but they were they didn't come from Eber, they came from another branch. So they didn't come from the branch which produced Abraham, they came from another branch. So Japheth basically was the English people, and Russia and all of those, Europe, Russia. Ham was Africa, and Seth was Israel and Arab. But Abraham was Israel, and then the rest now became the Arabians. But that's in the physical. So a lot of the Arabians today can trace their genealogy back to Abraham. Now let's look at it spiritually. What are the three most popular religions on earth? Christianity, Islam, Hinduism. Now, I didn't say most populous. I didn't say with the most worshippers. Yeah. The three most popular religions as of today is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Popular, not populous. You know the difference, yeah? Popular means you can be few, but everybody knows you. Everybody knows about your religion. Populous means half the world is actually following that, which is probably what's happening with Hinduism. Now that India is almost the most populous nation on earth, they will become the most populous nation just in a matter of months or years. So the three most popular, well-known, the three most well-known religions, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, can trace their ancestry to who? Abraham. So spiritually and physically, this man is really, really well-known. So God made those 7 promises to Abraham and reminded him again whilst he was in Haran. That's why the Bible says, and the Lord had said. So he was reminded again. So what did Abraham do in verse 4? For the first time, Abraham took the initiative to make a move himself. Well, his father was dead now, so he had to do something for himself. And that's a lesson for us. Sometimes we look at our support network is no longer there, and then we settle. The person who helped me up till now is no longer here. We settle. That person who always did this for me, my dad, when I lost my brother, when I lost my elder brother, 50% of my world crashed. I was just like, my coordinates, the one who he just sorts it. I just need to tell him, do this and all of that. I don't even need to look for the solution. I just said, this is the problem. And he just takes it on, and I don't even sniff about it. When he died, I lost my coordinates. But then God had to use that to quickly train me up to now take responsibility over more people, which is the position I am in right now. So you find out that when Abraham's coordinates disappeared, he had to take the initiative. Now Terah is no longer there. What did Abraham do? He progressed. Your support network might no longer be around you. What should you do? Progress. The man who promised you money might no longer be around. What should you do? Progress. The job you had before, we did everything, might no longer be there again. What should you do? Progress. You might have failed an exam before and it looks like the world was crashing down. What should you do? Progress. Your marriage may not be working and all that, and you're thinking of, and I just need to pack it up and all that. What should you do? Progress. And by progress means try to solve the problem, not jumping into another, not cut people off expeditiously. No. According to the gospel of Femi, you cut people off expeditiously. No. That is not the gospel. So I'm not talking about that. Work at it and resolve it. Anyways, God made this promise to Abraham, and Abraham now had to take the initiative. And guess what? He was 75 years old when he made that move. That's in verse 4 still. Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. 75. Some of us at 40, we have retired. We have peaked. I can't start going to school now. I can't start. You cannot teach an old dog new tricks. Who tells you you're an old dog at 40? Who? Why do we believe such a lie? No, at this age, no. Another brother of mine who passed, he always say when we're young, he say, at this stage of life and ministry, he always said it jokingly, you would ask him what you would have for dinner. Or you could tell him, oh, we're having yam and eggs for dinner. And you're like, what? At this stage of life and ministry? And you're like, what's that got to do with yam and eggs? And all that. But some people are like that. Whatever you tell them, whatever challenge you present before them, it's like, oh, no. I'm too old for that. I cannot handle that. I've just finished reading a book. It's called The Mindsets the mindset, the mind theory. It's a Carol Dweck, I think that's the name. It's a book I'll recommend for anyone to read. And it says people have the growth mindset or the fixed mindset. The fixed mindset is the one that only sees problems and never solutions. The growth mindset always sees solutions in every problem, always sees opportunities in every problem. The growth mindset is Mr. Fix-It mindset. The fixed mindset is, it can't be done. I cannot do it. I'm too old. I'm black. I'm a woman. I'm a man. I've got white hair. I've got white beard. What has that got to do with sliced bread? At 75, Abraham stepped out and went to the land of Canaan, and he arrived at the land of Canaan. And when he arrived, he saw Canaanites in the land, like as in people living there in the land. Do you know there is no vacancy? I'm not talking about a job. When you talk about moving up in life, there is no vacancy. You have to create your own vacancy. Somebody said, if they don't have a chair for you at the table, bring your own chair in. And if there is no table, create the table. If you are waiting for a position to become vacant so you can move into it, you had better go and create that position for yourself. The Canaanites, when you can see that Genesis chapter 12, verse 6, and Abraham passed through the land to the place of Shechem as far as the terebinth tree of Moreh, and the Canaanites were then in the land. The guy must have been thinking, how can God give me a land filled with people already? It's like looking at a house and like, I'm going to move into that house tomorrow, but it's already occupied. That was the challenge of faith. Can God make it happen that a house filled with people will become your house? That was the challenge of faith. It would have been easy if the house was empty. And God says, I will give you the key to that brand new house. Some of us will have faith for that. But you see a car driving into the house you want to move into, and you see a family moving in. What do you do then? We learn a lesson from Abraham. Verse 7, then the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, to your descendants I will give this land. This was a man who still hadn't had any children, no child, and he would have to wait for another 25 years. To your descendants I will give these children. And there Abraham built an altar to the Lord who appeared to him. Before I tell you the lesson there, what lesson can we learn from that? Abraham got to Canaan and built a spiritual altar there, even though he owned nothing in the land. What lesson can we learn from that, people? It is important to commit everything into God's hand. Yes.
So he knew that by himself, he couldn't get that promise as the people were already there. So he just built an altar to the Lord who he said to do.
He built an altar to the Lord who is able to fulfill his promise. Yes. There's something I'm looking for.
No matter where you find yourself, always put money.
No matter where you find yourself, always do what? Always spread the light of God. Yes. In fact, I'll take that. Thank you. Thank you for that. You might not own it physically. Fellowship. Thank you, Sister Christiana. Yes, fellowship. You might not own it physically, but you can actually own it by how? Spiritually. Abraham didn't own anything in the land, but God had told him it was his land. So Abraham established himself spiritually, brought God into the land. Because remember, God just appeared to him. God was speaking to him. It was, no, God, let's put you here. I know I will inherit this land as long as you are here. The same thing we can do with our jobs. The same thing we can do with our homes. The same thing we can do with our children. The same thing we can do with our marriages. The same thing we can do with our health. The same thing we can do with our finances. That when it looks overwhelmed, when it looks like we can't do this, even if we can do it, it still pays to establish God in that which we want to do. That was what Abraham did. Later he will buy a burial place. That was the only thing he bought, a burial place for himself and his children. But wherever Abraham got to, he set up an altar. He established God's presence in the place. You want to be the head and not the tail at your place of work. Start by establishing God's presence at your place. I'm not saying go and set up an altar in your office. They might sack you. I'm saying create an altar at home. Raise up a prayer altar for your workplace. That was what Abraham did. So he built an altar. That's in verse 7. Verse 8. And he moved from there to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called on the name of the Lord. Second altar. He didn't just do it the first time. Every time Abraham moved and got to a new destination in Canaan, what did he do? He built an altar to the Lord. I'm sure he got to a point where Abraham was able to count that at Shechem, there's an altar. At Bethel, there's another altar. At wherever, there's an altar. Every important point of my journey, I have built an altar to the Lord. My question to you is, are you building altars as you journey through life? Are there things you can look back to and refer to and say, there at that point, when I got married, I built an altar. At that point, when I had my first child, I built an altar. At that point, when I got that job, I built an altar. At that point, when I built the house, I built an altar. At that point, when I traveled to that country, I built an altar. Yes?
So Abraham, that was a physical altar. Abraham. And now, because we don't build altars all over, how do we build altars in those different aspects of life that you have mentioned?
How do we, like I said, I am not saying go raise a physical altar in your workplace. It might cause problems. They might have prayer rooms though, where you work. So, and you might take advantage of that. Like I said, it's a spiritual altar. It's a prayer altar. And there are quite a few ways you can build that. Number one, so when you're starting a new project and all of that, or you're starting something new, invest time in fasting and praying and probably sowing a seed, giving to the poor, giving to the church, whatever, to tie down a sacrifice to what you have just done. God has blessed you. Committed to God in prayer, through fasting and prayer, stand upon God's promises, sow a seed to it, and all of that. That Lord, this is what you have done for me. I am giving this as a sign that I acknowledge that you have done this. All these things about first fruits, all these things about tithes and all that, that's the idea behind it. Using it to tie down God's presence into what you have done. Do you know why David never lost a battle? Never, even when he had sinned. Because when David goes to battle, everything David gets personally from the battle, everything David fights, and the crown and all of that, he brings them to the temple. Everything he conquers, everything he gets, he brings them to the temple. Guess what? Once he has done that, number one, that guarantees two things. David never lost the battle because God knows that whatever he gets comes to his house anyway. And then number two, when people see that David has given everything he has to God, then everybody gives what they have to David. Who wins? Both. He has given all of his things to God. Men also see that, look at this man, everything, the crown, everything, all the kingly things, he has given them to God. So they give it to him. That was how David was raising an altar for every battle he won. So there are a variety of ways we can do it, through fasting and prayers, through giving and all of that. Time some giving, not just giving to the church, giving to the poor, helping a family, going out of our way to bless a widow, doing something that we know is not ordinary. That is how that answers the question. That is how we build altars. I want us to finish this chapter and we'll end today. So just generate, all this is just introduction. Next week, we will now actually look at the life of Abraham. This is just introduction. We're just looking at his spiritual calling, his background and his spiritual calling. Next week, we'll look at his achievements, we'll look at his weaknesses, and then we'll look at the general lessons we can learn from his life. But we've got a few more minutes and I want us to end it today on this chapter. What do you do when you run into problems because you have obeyed God? Anybody? Ask for help from God. Okay, let me rephrase that. Have you ever run into problems because you have done what you know God wants you to do, what is right, what scripture says you should do, and all that, and you have done it, and that has led into problems? Have you ever experienced famine in your promised land? Think about it. You wanted that job, you got in, and then there's famine. You wanted that marriage, kept yourself, and all of that. You got married, and there's famine. You have planned your finances, you pay your tithe, you give to the poor, you do everything you know to do, and then there was famine. What do you do when you have famine in your promised land? Does that make God a liar?
No, it doesn't.
Sorry, go on, Femi.
No, it doesn't. But I know personally for me, like I've always said this before, whenever I run into issues, I always tend to walk away from it further, just to get myself together and then go back to it, right? So whenever I'm doing something for, let's just say I'm doing something for God and I do run into problems, I would, like Jonah, I'll be honest, I would take the next ship and try to run away up until I get swallowed by a whale before I go back. I'm being honest, right?
But
what I should learn to do as a believer is to, when in my moment of walking away, I should learn to walk away with God, to be like, God, this is what you've asked of me. This is what I'm running into. And it scares me and I'm afraid. And now it would then give me the reinforcement I would need to head back into the issue and deal with it and then complete the task, in my opinion. That's just how I do things. I know.
Thank you. Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. We don't run away from God. Thanks, Sister Christiana. She's put it in the chat. We remind God of his promises, what he told us before we went into it. Let's be frank. None of us ever expect famine in our promised land. I don't know about you. When I hear promised land, I think a land flowing with what? With milk and honey. Houses I have not built. Cars I have not bought. Well, nowadays, I don't know if that still happens, but yeah, it'd be good to have cars you did not buy yourself. Cars you have not bought. Wealth that you did not work for. And all of that. That is the picture of the promised land. Abraham, having gotten into Canaan, the first thing he experienced was famine. And guess what Father Abraham did? Like Femi, he jumped on the next ship off to Egypt. And when he got to Egypt, what happened? First, he had to lie that Sarah was not his wife. There were so many good things to learn about Father Abraham, but he also had some weaknesses. Father Abraham will not die for anybody. If we're looking for a suicide bomber, Father Abraham will not die for anybody. The man cherishes his own life. He told his wife, he said, these people will kill me because of you. Tell them you are my sister. We are not husband and wife. If they have you and they marry you and all of that, we just accept that that is God's will. It is God's will for them to take you away so that I will not die. The man could not stand for his wife. He was ready for her to be taken. In fact, she was taken. And another lesson we'll learn from Abraham's life next week. When people cannot defend you, God himself will defend you. Each time Abraham lied about Sarah, God rose up to defend Sarah because her covering has run away. Anyways, Abraham went to Egypt because of famine. He was chased out of Egypt because he lied about Sarah. Imagine such embarrassment. A king saying, get out. Go. Wherever you came from, return there. You can't stay in a land. Go. But when he was leaving Egypt, he left with a slave named Hagar. And she will become a problem in future. We will learn that from next week. That's where we'll end tonight. Any questions, any thoughts, anything on Facebook we've not picked up tonight, any comments we've not picked up, anything we've not covered tonight? Symbolic, I guess. Come